Okay, so picking up from the last video, here's our definition of fisheries management: controlling the quantity of a stock caught through the human objective of fishing to obtain the largest sustainable catch through recreational, commercial, or traditional activities. So, we left it thinking about how we might control fishing. Okay, so traditionally, there have been a few different ways. You can sit there and here and brainstorm a couple of things, but which we would do in class, but for this video, we'll just talk about them directly. Seasonal closures would be one way that we've controlled fishing. Okay, so if you think about the trout season in freshwater fisheries in New Zealand, there's only a certain period that trout fishing is open for the year, and other times of the year is closed. And that is to give the spawners a chance to breed and pass on the next generation. Okay, licenses. You can restrict how many people are able to access the fishery by putting a fee on it, and some people just won't pay or won't be able to afford to pay for a license to go fishing. And that, of course, gets into issues of fairness in terms of who can afford to take up the sport, feed themselves through catching fish. Area closures. All right, so these are marine reserves and other areas that you may want to protect a spawning stock, or just to have a reserve of fish that can breed and produce other babies that flow out of that area. Or you might have gear restrictions, and these are the most common ways of restricting how much effort goes into a fishery, controlling the effort that goes into a fishery. Things like, for example, in New Zealand, you might have a certain net size that is allowed, or a certain net size that's illegal. If you've been longlining, you know that you can only have 25 hooks on your long line. And, of course, you can't use dynamite. So certain gear is not allowed. Okay. So traditionally, was there any place that you were excluded from going on the ocean? Is there anybody, like if you own a farm, nobody else can come and take your produce that you're growing on that farm, but can somebody go into your patch of ocean and take your fish? Well, first off, it can't be your patch if nobody owns it. And traditionally, you could go anywhere on the water, anywhere that you could float to, you were allowed to go. The water is owned by nobody, and so if you could float on it, then you could go there, you could go fishing, and as long as nobody was shooting cannonballs at you, then you were fine to be there. And who owns the ocean? Speaking of ownership, well, traditionally, you own it. If we're talking about New Zealand's exclusive economic zone, which you covered in ecology, you know that the exclusive economic zone goes 200 nautical miles off the coast of New Zealand, and you, as a citizen, are the owner of that body of water. Okay, so the government is put into control, given the power to make laws about what access there is available in that exclusive economic zone. But you own that water. And another way of thinking about it is nobody owns the water, because nobody's really going to be, as individuals, going out there and patrolling it, and especially outside the exclusive economic zone. Nobody in the world can lay claim to owning any particular part of the ocean by a convention through the United Nations that is considered unowned outside of 200 nautical miles. So you can do anything you like outside of the exclusive economic zone. And so now if we think about controlling fishing effort from an individual perspective, is there ever a time when it makes sense to stop catching fish you can sell? And at this point in the video, I'm going to refer you to go to khanacademy.org and watch the Tragedy of the Commons video. Now, if you go to Moodle, you'll see that there are readings on the Tragedy of the Commons, which you should be expected to be able to talk about in the exam. And the Tragedy of the Commons is a fundamental concept wherein if nobody has ownership and everybody has access, then it doesn't make any sense to take care of something that somebody else will overutilize. So if you go and school yourself up on Tragedy of the Commons, the concept, a little bit, then I'll just take it as read that you've done that, moving on in this video. So here's a little quiz. Okay, we've had a definition of a fishery, so maybe give yourself a little quiz. Pause the video here and see if you can answer these questions. Okay, assuming you've paused it, we'll go to the answers for the questions. Is whaling a fishery? Yes, it is. It's a wild-caught resource. It's extracting a wild-caught marine resource, so whaling is a fishery. Is mussel farming a fishery? Well, no, it's not, because by definition, if you're farming them, that is not a wild resource. That is an artificial resource. You're farming them, and so any type of aquaculture is not a fishery. Clubbing seal is a fishery? Yep, that's a wild marine resource, an animal. So like we said before, it's not just fish or swimming things, although seals swim, of course. It can be anything. It can be seaweeds, but clubbing seals is a fishery. Who owns the ocean? Well, we just answered that. What's a sustainable fishery? Okay, one that can be maintained indefinitely with minimal long-term effects on the environment. List 4 controls a fishery manager can use to limit fishing effort. Okay, we've done that up above. And 4 global commons, which you should be able to answer if you've done the research on the Tragedy of the Commons. You'll need to know that for the exam anyway. Okay. So, how is all this management working? How are we doing in terms of the global fisheries situation? Traditional fishing management, is it protecting all these populations that we'd like to protect? Okay, so let's think about man's history evolutionarily. Okay, so before there were populations of large populations, and we had things like steam trawlers and the like, and big industrial trawlers that we have now. The first 199,875 years before the Industrial Revolution, we fished with little boats, spears, nets made of flax, and we were close to the shore. We didn't go very far offshore and do much fishing. Populations were small, and there were very few environmental impacts. Everything we were fishing with was made out of wood or flax or totally environmental or totally biodegradable materials. And so the last 125 years, though, we went from this, little villages, to this, massive cities. Huge amounts of increases in population. And obviously feeding this type of population compared to this type of population is going to take a lot more of the resources out of the ocean. Okay. So here's a traditional indigenous fishing vessel. Okay, slightly modernized, and but this is what we're fishing with now. A factory trawler. This would be about 110 meters or so. Some of these things are converted destroyers from Cold War era, or sorry, not destroyers, frigates, and patrol boats and the like. And these things have been converted to be able to go out and catch fish around the world at a very efficient way, with very efficient extraction. Okay, so steam-powered fishing boats developed into diesel fishing vessels. Human population growth went way up, and fish is a very good protein. We've evolved to eat fish. Most indigenous populations eat fish, be it protein or be it freshwater or marine. And we've developed massive amounts of technology in terms of nets and the like in order to quickly pull lots of fish up. So here you go. Here's the first 2.5 million years before Homo sapiens evolved, and then just a little bit of time. We'll say in the couple 100,000 years that Homo sapiens have been around, 200 to 150,000 years, and then we reach this dashed line right here, which is the when farming started, when we had agricultural societies started and hunter-gathering societies sort of faded out. And so the population started to increase slowly to, here's a billion, so still less than a billion people. A third of the population in Europe died off with the Black Death, the plague, just in the Dark Ages. And then you have the Industrial Revolution, and since then our population has been soaring. Okay, so we're at about 7 and a bit billion. Population is expected to be up to 8.5 or so in 2025, which is not very far away. 12 years, 13 years away. So another couple of billion people. So that, of course, has added to the demand for more protein. And we'll leave it there and go on to the next video. We'll pick this up in the next video.